Every SIEM on the market today advertises an API, and the docs will show you an endpoint for every record in the system. And yet every team that is actually built on one of those APIs knows the same frustration. You get all the data, and somehow you still don't have the product. This series is about fixing that, about taking a web-based SIEM and converting it into a headless one. And this first module is the why, because until you can say precisely what's wrong with just use the API, you can't say what the conversion actually has to move. So here's the claim. For 25 years of web development, the API and the user interface were never equals. The API returns records. The application, the part that makes those records useful, lives in the head. Think about what a screen is actually doing. A record might carry 40 fields, but the page shows you 6, because somebody decided those 6 are the ones an operator needs. A status comes back from the API as a word, and the page decides whether that word is reassuring or alarming. A button sits grayed out until a precondition is met that no schema anywhere mentions. These aren't display choices. They're operating knowledge, the accumulated judgment about how the product is meant to be used. And all of it sits on the wrong side of the API. The API is a parts bin. The GUI is the assembled machine. And that's why just use the API has always been harder than it sounds. Strip the head off, and what's left isn't the application. It's raw material. You don't have to take that on faith, because you can audit it on any screen you own. Here's one of ours, a case opened in our console. The screen an analyst stares at when the only question that matters is this real? The moment it opens, it hands you everything you need to answer that. The story, the evidence, the suspects. So ask the question an integration engineer never thinks to ask. Where did all of this come from? Because the case the API returns is a dozen lines, timestamps, a severity, a list of signature IDs. That is not what you're looking at. Chase that gap, and the screen starts giving up its secrets. Open the network tab and count. That one case view fired half a dozen calls. The signature IDs came back as names and descriptions, resolved against the detection catalog. The timeline came from a bounded event search the page derived for you. The right entities, the right window. The MITRE tags were mapped from the signatures that fired. Even the similar cases panel is the page fingerprinting behavior and searching its own history. None of that assembly exists in any single API response. And here's the part that should worry you. When that bounded search comes back empty, the page knows the difference between no related events and a wrong query because the page built the query. A caller gluing raw API calls together doesn't. An empty answer returns nothing, and nothing looks exactly like good news. That assembly, the gathering, the ordering, the judgment, is the entire difference between having data and having an investigation. We ran this audit on our own screens, and the findings kept sorting into the same 6 categories. The question the screen answers, what it gathers to answer it, the order it asks in, the judgments it encodes, what it promises to show when there's nothing to show, and what it lets you do, and when it refuses. 6 columns. That's the audit, and it's phase 1 of the conversion, because you cannot extract logic you haven't written down. And here's the uncomfortable part. Everything in those columns is application logic, decisions your product makes on behalf of a customer. And right now it's expressed in CSS, in a sort order, in a disabled attribute, documented nowhere, tested nowhere, versioned nowhere, available to nobody who isn't a human being looking at that exact page. So that's the why. The head was never decoration on top of your product. The head is the product, and the API was always the parts bin behind it. Converting to headless doesn't mean deleting the head. It means moving what the head knows, the gathering, the sequencing, the judgment, into a surface a machine can call. And to show you the shape of where this goes, when we ran this conversion on our own product, that case view became a single callable capability. Ask once, expand case, and everything the screen assembled comes back as one investigation-ready answer. The case, the resolved signatures, the bounded evidence, the timeline, the MITRE mapping. And when a step can't complete, it says so, and says why. A partial answer that admits it's partial, never a silent gap. One screen became one capability, carrying everything the screen knew. That's the conversion, and it starts with the audit.